I started making story projects, like the one I'm making for your school when I was teaching elementary art at Laughlin Design Center in East Nashville. At that time, I was also making watercolor invitations and using Photoshop software to put in people's faces and text. This was the beginning of my artwork. One day, while I was teaching, I decided to show an episode of Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, which really inspired me to create my coloring books. I'd love for you to see where he meets the artist Red Groom.
Surprise for you.
Look at that.
I did the neighborhood trolley, and I put in some of my characters, my taxi and my bus.
That's wonderful.
And then I thought, well, I'm going to make you the driver, but you've got to have some of your characters as passengers.
Well,
so that's
sure.
what I've done.
And you put in Daniel Tiger.
Yeah.
And Henrietta Pussycat. And King Friday the 13th. And Queen Sarah. And X the Owl.
Right.
Who's that hanging on?
That's Mr. McFeely. He's just barely catching the trolley, and I'm going to have to add color and, complete him. I'm thinking now, I'm seeing this great green sweater you're wearing. I'd like to kind of test the color out and see if it works. Do you mind if I
Not at
try a
all.
little color?
I loved how Red Grooms did a drawing of Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. That gave me the idea to do drawings of all the people in my neighborhood. I decided to use these drawings and turn them into a coloring book and call them Miss Camilla's Neighborhood. They're all about telling stories of people. Let's see how I make these in the next video. Today I'm going to be talking to you about my neighborhood portrait series, Miss Camilla's Neighborhood. I'm going to show you how to create a portrait. This is an example of a dog portrait that I did that tells the dog's story and his dream for his future. I will be walking you through the steps of drawing and painting and planning out your project. I'm going to show you what we're making. It starts with this. This is the end when it's all produced in a coloring book. So here are some of the pages in the coloring book, and I'm going to show you how to make them. And then you can make your own coloring books if you want to.
Awesome.
And your own coloring pages.
Yay!
So each of them starts as an acrylic painting on a canvas, just like this. And this tells the story of this dog.
Look at the drawings in the background behind the dog. This dog likes peanut butter, walks, bones, chasing balls, being in nature. His dream for his future is to be free of his leash, outdoors, running free in the sunshine.
So the way that you make this is, I use transfer paper, which is graphite paper, and it's really important to get graphite paper because some transfer paper doesn't erase, and you want to be able to erase these lines. So it's like a graphite pencil. You can also make your own transfer paper by taking an image like this, or a photograph, any kind of image that you want, and just with your regular pencil, I show my students how to do this on their own. You color the back of it really dark and heavy, and use cross hatching so that you get it really dark and heavy.
That means she's got some lines going up and down vertically and then some lines going horizontally.
Yeah, so back and forth like this. But you want it to be really dark like this because that's how the transfer paper is really. And then you lay your artwork down and you take a ballpoint pen, which I have one in there somewhere, and then you go over your lines like this. That's how you make the transfer paper. And that's the first step in the process. It's important when you tape this down to think about how you can check it as you go. So you have like a little escape hatch here is what I think of it is, so that I can look back into the drawing and see how it's going. Let's peek in there and see. That's the basics, and there's some things on here that I will need to fix. It takes a lot of time. It takes me 8 to 10 hours to create one 8x10 painting because of that, the building the layers of paint. and the high level of detail, because you can see how tiny some of those spaces are, and getting in and painting that detail and making it all look really clean, because craftsmanship is, for me, a really important part of this work. I like it to look really crisp, like a coloring page looks really crisp, and so I like the paintings when they're finished to also have that high level of detail and craftsmanship. Once I have paint on my paintbrush, I try to find a way to use it somewhere else in the painting so that I conserve my paint and take really good care of my materials that way. So that I'm just going to go into her while I have paint on there. I don't want to waste it.
Once Miss Camilla is finished painting the portrait, she begins to painstakingly paint the background. Look how small all of those beautiful detailed lines and images are. It takes her a long time to paint those details, but she does them well and with good craftsmanship.
Thanks to Cassie Stevens for that great video. Now I'd like to share with you the progress of the drawing for your school. I've created a time-elapsed video that shows you your drawing in progress. I've had so much fun. I used the same techniques that you saw in the video. Big sheets of graphite paper, which I went over with a ballpoint pen. Then I lifted the graphite paper up and started going over all those pencil lines with a Sharpie marker. I love creating thick lines and thin lines and every other line that you can think of. The next step for your project will be for me to draw strips in the background. Inside each of those strips that I call wallpaper strips, I will fill up with symbols that tell the story of what everyone likes the most about your school and your school's dream for the future. Once I've done that, I'll send it back with Miss Sturgill and you'll start filling it in with paint. I think you would really have fun naming the paint colors. That's what I'm doing now with my art. I'm creating paint by number kits, and all of the color names tell the story of the person or place that I'm creating a paint by numbers kit for. And of course, I had to create a paint by numbers kit for Mr. Rogers. I want to end this video with one last video that I'd like for you to see what I'm doing now in my studio.
Just because you are all grown up doesn't mean you're too old to play.
Check this out. Remember these paint by numbers like this? It's pretty cool, huh? Well, News Channel 5's Kristen Scovera introduces us to a local artist, you can tell by the picture, who is painting the town.
Sitting in her home studio.
You've got everything you need right here. A fun design, colors that tell more of the story.
Camilla Spadafino combines colors and numbers.
Dive their paintbrush into that delicious acrylic paint.
For an activity some of us haven't tried since childhood.
In fact, it's relieving of stress to do that.
She calls her kits Paint the Town by Numbers.
They're not designed on a computer. They're designed right here by me with my hand and this paintbrush. Whatever paintbrush comes in the kit, that's what I'm making the kit with.
An art teacher by day, she's lived in Nashville since the 1980s.
Ride my bike back on West End. You could never do that now.
She started with faces, then moved onto places.
With Nashville, and I have these vintage paint by numbers downstairs, and I think that they were in the back of my mind, and I just started sketching from some photos I had taken of downtown.
She uses those vintage prints as inspiration.
This one is called Cumberland River, number 5.
Choosing colors as an ode to the past while introducing new shades for a new generation.
It's not a problem if you make a mistake, then you just paint right back over it, and then you just fill in with these are just short dashed lines.
And while the lines are there as a guide, she says staying inside them is just a suggestion.
Every single one of us, it is innate. It is our birthright as a human being to be creative.
In Nashville, Kristen Scovera, News Channel 5.